The darkness does not slumber, many cells and only a dark empty corridor along which a silhouette wandered. The prisoners made ends meet in their cells and no one cared. Only the horrible smell and the dampness. The silhouette that had been wandering so carelessly down the dark corridor finally stopped in front of one of the cells. It was a kind-looking grandfather who addressed one of the prisoners. "Jew, there's work to be done." The prisoner only looked up silently at the grandfather. "Kill the heroes. So, in 3 days, there will be a celebration in the Heroes Guild." The grandfather who turned to the prisoner wanted him to kill the heroes. They discussed everything, sitting across from each other at a table by the lamp. The plan was as follows. On the day that the heroes would have a feast, Grandpa would sneak into the guild under the guise of a servant and then give a sign to the prisoner Jew when he got the chance. Grandpa also gave Jew the information about the heroes that Jew was looking at so well now. Heroes are the living legends, those who are loved by gods and humans alike. They have no equal. Heroes have destroyed 4 great demon kings and leveled their army of many thousands. They have been dubbed the hope of mankind, and now Jew is being asked to take their lives. But Jew didn't care much about that. He only wondered how he should kill the heroes. Was it at his discretion? Grandpa, on the other hand, allowed the lad to do as he wished. However, there was still one wish. The man slapped his hand menacingly on the table, pointing to a photo of one of the heroes. He wanted this hero Jew to be killed in front of him. As it turned out, this hero had defamed the honor of the old man's granddaughter. The old man, however, would never forgive this scoundrel. He thought that this scoundrel should suffer so that death would seem like salvation. For Jew, such an outburst from the old man was new to him. He had not expected to see such a thing from Grandpa Klo. Klo, on the other hand, with tears in his eyes, said he realized that his feelings would never be understood by Jew. But it wasn't that important to the old man either. Klo argued that his tools don't need feelings. After all, the strongest weapon is the one that obeys any orders without question. Other tools, however, break down and only the best tools remain. This mission will be Jew's last. So, Jew's task will be to kill the heroes. 3 days later, the guild event began peacefully. The heroes were drinking and hadn't guessed anything yet. Among the guests, there were only the high nobility. The girls that were invited to the party, one after another asked Mr. Hero to dance with them. The same only warned the girls in advance that he was bad at dancing and apologized, but still extended his hand to the ladies. Heroes are not only good at killing monsters, outstanding achievements, attractive looks, they seem perfect. But that didn't matter to Jew. Rar he was told to kill this versatile hero, he would do so. When the heroes left and Klo signaled, Jew set to work. First, the lights went out in the entire guild. All the guests were in a panic and could not understand or see anything. At this time, Jew crept up on the heroes stealthily and without making any noise. He saw 2 servants who also could not understand the reason for the pitch darkness but were clearly intent on finding out what was wrong. And while the servants were trying to calm the guests and tell everyone to stay put, Jew stealthily crept inside the building. Klo, who was the only one who saw Jew, just mentally asked the guy not to screw up. At this time, Jew was already rushing down the guild corridor with all his legs. He was watching out for the servants and trying to find the hero's room. Finally, he came to the room where the map said the heroes should be. Suddenly, he heard some talking outside the door and decided to take his time. As it turned out, behind the door was a servant who was on his knees apologizing to the heroes for such a malfunction. The frightened man only asked the heroes to wait for the others to find out the cause of this misunderstanding. But the heroes clearly did not like the request to wait. One of the heroes, a girl in a gorgeous dress, was most indignant. She claimed that because it was so pitch dark she could not even look in the mirror. At this point, another girl who was part of the heroes supported her partner. She also did not understand what was the point of the dresses then. Another girl at all just wanted to go back to the event and eat. At this time, the servant was just tearfully begging on his knees to forgive him. The guy who danced with the girls recently, on the other hand, said that the guild probably just had some problems and there was nothing that could be done about it. These words reassured the servant. He felt that he had been forgiven. The guy at the same time suggested that his mates illuminate everything with magic. The disgruntled girl found it tedious, but she did it nonetheless. When the light appeared, though not bright, the lad suggested that they have some fun until everything was fixed. At this point, the servant happily agreed with the hero. But, suddenly, the lad drew his sword and initiated everyone into his plans. He planned to cut off the servant's limbs and make a daruma. A daruma is a Japanese doll with no arms or legs. These words horrified the servant. The hero, however, went on to say that the minister had recently banned the use of humans as toys. But since the hero planned to burn the servant, he thought that he would not blab. The hero decided to start with his right hand. After these words, a pitiful cry was heard in the room from the servant. At that moment, Jew, who had heard the whole conversation between the hero and the servant, remembered Klo's words about how this guy had defamed his granddaughter's honor. It was then that Jew realized that these heroes really deserved to die. In the room at this time, the servant was already being held to keep him still. and the jolly hero with a sword in his hands was saying that they would make the servant swallow so much medicine that he wouldn't even feel pain. At that moment, the door to the room opened. This attracted the hero's attention, so he stopped and asked, addressing the darkness, "Who is there?" At that moment, Ju entered the room. He introduced himself and bluntly stated that he had come here to kill the heroes. These words made the hero laugh. He obviously did not take Ju seriously. The hero called Ju just a fool and had already guessed that the lights were turned off on purpose. In that case, the hero decided to deal with the servant later. He thought he could have better fun with Ju, so he ordered the other heroes not to interfere. Of course, the others were against this and called their comrade selfish. At this moment, Ju looked at the servant who was trembling with fear and only begged to be saved. Ju wondered if every day the heroes faced danger, or could it be there for having been on the brink in death many times? So could it be that the heroes could fight like heroes because they had already lost their minds? The heroes at this point decided to dig in to determine who would do Ju. In the end, the guy who defamed Chloe's honor won. He decided not to be ceremonious for long and started to approach Ju with a sword in his hand. The hero was walking and talking about how this whole situation was strange because Ju was hiking a murderer, but he came for a duel. And the hero was right, for usually Ju's victims don't even have time to see him. It's not Ju's style, but before he disappears, the guy would like to check something. He wanted to find out what his strength was worth in front of the heroes. With those words, Ju sheathed his sword, and the hero grinned. In the end, the hero decided that the fight would be fun and pounced on Ju. When the hero struck the first blow with his sword, Ju dodged, but felt the amount of power in the hero's body. Ju realized that death would be instantaneous if hit. The hero kept attacking Ju and Ju only dodged the hero's attacks. The hero was annoyed by this and asked Ju to attack. The hero's punch seemed powerful to Ju, but his style is quite simple, for a demon doesn't need more. In the end, the hero decided to use the dragon flash since he had already realized that Ju was a good runner. That flash hit right into Ju's hand. As a result, the guy was left without an arm. Looking at Ju's surprised face, the hero began to already cheer. He claimed that the light that the sword emitted was capable of many things. But suddenly, the hero felt something wrong in his stomach area. Looking up, he saw a dagger. From the pain, the hero fell off his feet and began to roar loudly. At this time, a silhouette began to loom near Ju's lost arm. Guy said that the hero was still weak in front of another opponent even though he had destroyed 4 demon kings. After these words, Ju's lost arm was completely restored. Seeing this, the hero was dumbfounded, for he had cut off Ju's arm. At this moment, the other heroes looked at Ju with even more astonishment. They did not understand what kind of magic this was, for they had never seen such a thing, much less from assassins. At this moment, the hero began to rise to his feet. He realized that Ju could do sorcery and decided to demonstrate how he would easily heal his wound. But when he tried to do so, he vomited blood. He collapsed to the floor again and only moaned softly. Ju at this time said that people could die even from such a wound, and that the dagger he had stuck into the hero had poison on it. But the hero would still survive for a few more minutes since he is a hero with strong magic. At this point, the other heroes realized where this was going and decided to act. One of the girls tried to summon a certain Hake with her staff, but suddenly a dagger flew into her chest, preventing her from finishing the summoning. Since Ju's dagger flew straight down the girl's throat, death was instantaneous, and the rest of the heroes could only watch in horror. Another girl, more like a guy, also decided to attack Ju, but with her fists. Ju easily dodged the lady's blow, and then the guy put his sword right into her stomach. The last girl of the heroes was not as brave as the others. She crawled into a corner and curled up in a ball and covered her head with her hands. She only begged Ju, who had already approached her, not to kill. The girl did not want to die. But before she could utter another word, Ju made the final thrust with his sword. At this moment appeared Chloe, who, looking at the bloody bodies of the heroes, realized that Ju had already finished his work. The servant, who had also been in the room watching the scene, recognized Chloe and guessed that it was he who had set the whole thing up. Ju at this point, looking at the servant, asked Chloe if he should be killed too, to which Chloe replied that this servant should not be killed, for he is a master of keeping his mouth shut. And now it was time to finish off the very hero who had defamed the honor of Chloe's granddaughter and was still alive. Through blood and sweat, the hero could only manage to utter one word as he looked at Ju and Chloe. Cowards. Ju didn't like it, for he was fighting by the hero's rules. The hero meanwhile took a look at Chloe, who was crouched next to him, and realized that it was the old man who had set it all up. Chloe, however, decided to give the hero one last little piece of advice, and it is that the most terrible monster is not a monster, but a man. Ju, putting his sword to the hero's throat, also decided to say his last words. He only asked the bastard to try to behave better in his next life. The hero, however, called Chloe a lousy person and himself a legendary person. After saying those words, Ju made a final swing of his sword and chopped off the hero's head. Finally, the hero was dead. Chloe sat over the corpse of the hero with tears flowing from his eyes. He was glad that now his granddaughter could sleep in peace. Ju at this time walked around Chloe. At that moment the old man called out to him and then changed his mind to speak. Ju did not say a word, but only looked out the window. His attention was caught by the magnificent starry sky. 3 days after finishing his work, Ju had to get rid of all traces and then leave the country at once. Ju's new name was Jade Clone. Chloe forged all the right documents for the guy. With them, Ju, the current Jade, will be able to cross the border safely. From now on, Ju's killer is dead. But he still had one question. How does he live? Ju has been killing people for as long as he can remember. Can someone like him just disappear into the crowd? Deliver your dagger. Ju is already contemplating suicide instead of living without purpose. But suddenly, the boy's attention was drawn to a notebook lying on the ground. Ju picked it up, puzzled as to where this notebook had come from in his bag. But after a moment he remembered everything. It was already in prison when his cellmate asked him if he had ever tasted cake. Ju replied that he had never tasted cake and asked his cellmate if he had ever tasted cake. To which he replied that he had never tasted cake. He talked about how he met a man today who said he was carrying a cake to his daughter. The cake was round, soft, and with edible flowers. The words about flowers puzzled Ju a little because he remarked that it couldn't be. But the latter still thought that those flowers were surely very tasty. Ju's cellmate decided to add this to the list of things he wanted to do, so he opened his notebook and started scribbling something in it. As Ju got closer, he saw his cellmate drawing how he would deliver the cake. But Ju thought that his mate's plan was to eat the cake. The kid, on the other hand, explained that the man was unable to deliver the cake to his daughter because he had killed him. At that moment the kid said that he would definitely get out of here, be free and in the world outside. He spoke with tears in his eyes about how he did not want to kill anyone and would live like a normal person. A kid named Hachai planned to escape from that place with Ju. It was this notebook of Hachai's that was now in Ju's hands. Ju remembered every detail as if it were yesterday. As he closed the notebook, Ju realized that it was too early for him to die. Silently, the boy walked towards the cliff. As he looked up at the sky, he realized that it was impossible to do everything on Hachai's list, but Ju wanted to try to do it instead of Hachai. Because of that, Ju was determined to see the world outside and bring back memories as a gift. It didn't sound so bad. For another long time, Ju just stood over the cliff and admired the beauty of nature. So, Ju, who killed the heroes, is dead. Now his new life begins. The life of an ordinary man. So, legendary heroes have been killed. This news traveled through the Elgard Empire, where it caused tears and regret. Some saw it as the revenge of demons, others blamed the soldiers. Many rumors appeared. But the truth is that it was the work of only one assassin and no one knows about it. And that's because that person doesn't exist anymore. After a while, Ju had already reached the kingdom of Insar. It is a big impregnable fortress with high walls, and there were queues lining up to enter this kingdom. So now Ju is at the border of the kingdom of Insar and is standing in the queue just like the other people planning to get it. There were checkers at the entrance that looked at the documents and anyone who crossed the border of the kingdom. So, Ju would be living as Jade the clone with the false documents that Chloe had made. Chloe picked up Ju and all this time he existed in the shadows. So there is no family data in Ju's new documents. All the information except for Ju's image was bought from Jade Clone. They say money is more important than life. For the underground it is exactly that. At this point, Ju finally made it to the checker. He showed the man in armor his papers, and when the checker noticed that Ju appeared light, Ju lied and said that his house had burned down and all that was left was his papers. The inspector looked at Ju with some suspicion. But, in the end, he let Ju through. Ju was very surprised at this, therefore he caused the checker to question him with his strange emotions. When the examiner asked Ju what was wrong, Ju replied that it was nothing and quickly went to town. And, as Ju was about to enter, the examiner called out to him and asked him to stand. Ju turned around and the checker only said, "Welcome to the free kingdom of Insar." He also waved at Ju and wished him a good journey. Ju, on the other hand, just started to leave. He was a little frightened by this situation. As he looked around at the people around him, Ju thought that this kingdom was really free. It is full of people of all kinds of professions. In that case, Ju decided that he had to get a job if he wanted to live a new life. But is there such a job that only a killer can do? Will Ju also be able to spend his time with a smile on his face like all the people in this kingdom? These questions tormented Ju, and he had no answers. At this moment, Ju heard Hachai's voice behind him. Ju can definitely do it. This made Ju stand on the spot and then turned around at the voice. But when he turned around, all Ju saw were unfamiliar faces. In the end, the boy thought he was just imagining things. In that case, he went on wandering around the kingdom. Eventually, the lad decided to head into the forest. He learnt the way from the locals and set off. In the forest, Ju came across a big scary monster, but he was able to defeat it. When it got dark, the lad sat around a campfire and tasted the monster's meat. 3 days later, as Ju was still wandering around the kingdom as carefree as ever, he noticed that people were moving to the same place. He decided to go along with them as he would not attract attention. Also, Ju thought that he would definitely find a job there as well. After a while, the turn came to Ju. The soldier who was standing at the pass asked for Ju's ID and personal belongings. Ju merely provided the soldier with his only documents and asked if they would do. The soldier, looking at the fact that Ju was carrying so little, surmised that he simply had nowhere to go, so he had traveled here. Ju did not hide it and explained that he just wanted to find somewhere to stay and work. At this point, the soldier for some reason scowled his face. He told Ju directly that he smelled bad and no one would hire him like that. The soldier had no questions about his ID card, so he let Ju pass. Finally, the soldier asked Ju to just stay out of trouble. The soldier also mentioned the smell again. Then Ju thanked the soldier and went on his way. As he left, he thought about the fact that his skills could be useful for battle if he were a soldier, but Ju also realized that he was only in the business of killing. Now he was completely free, so some work in the sun was okay too. As Ju wandered the streets, even passersby covered their noses and whispered that this guy smelled bad. Ju didn't like it himself, so he decided to find a tavern and wash up for now. That's what Ju did. After wandering around for a while, he found the place he wanted. Standing in the shower room, Ju thought about the fact that he hadn't showered in a long time. So far, he has only been able to find lodging for 10 days. All that was in the shelter was a sword, documents, and a few coins. That's all Ju took. At that moment, someone outside the shower room door started shouting loudly and indignantly that someone had been washing for a very long time. Ju went to the door, opened it, and apologized to the guy who was expressing his displeasure. Such a big man made the indignant guy's eyes pop up to his forehead. But Ju asked him to pass to the shower, and the guy, looking at the floor, thanked Ju. Being in his room, Ju collapsed relaxedly on the bed. He noticed how different this bed was from the one in the basement. Ju couldn't even recall the last time he had slept on one of these. He could feel himself feeling lighter, and it was all because there were no murders in his life now. At that moment, Ju remembered Hachai saying that he wanted to sleep in a soft bed, which meant that Ju had fulfilled their of the items on Hachai's list. At that moment, Ju felt something tickling his nose. This made him sneeze so hard that the soft bed broke. Eventually, Ju realized that this bed was really so-so and he should get a job soon so he could move to a better place. In the morning, Ju started wandering the streets again, as he had not been able to do so yesterday because he went straight to the tavern. Walking through the streets, Ju never ceased to be amazed at how many people there were. The shops on the streets were also fashionable. In that case, Ju felt that there must definitely be some work here. Looking into a gun shop, he was attracted to one of them, but it was expensive. Ju realized that if he didn't get his act together, he would just keep going around gun shops like this. As the boy got ready to leave, however, his attention was caught by an odor coming from the bakery. Turning around, Ju looked at the attractive and delicious-looking buns. Ju decided to go inside after all, even though he had given all the money for the room. Suddenly, a brilliant idea popped into his head. At that moment, a bakery worker approached him and asked if there was anything she could do to help. Ju responded by saying that he wanted to work at the bakery. This statement from such a gloomy guy dumbfounded the employee. She asked Ju if he meant a part-time job. Ju, on the other hand, asked what he had to do to work here. With his intimidating stare, he pressed the worker so hard that she almost cried. At that moment, an angry man came out of the office and asked Ju what he was doing. As it turned out, it was the director of the shop. The worker tried to explain something to the director, but Ju interrupted her and told the director that he wanted to talk to him. Without further ado, the director simply threw Ju out into the street, calling him a robber. Ju did several somersaults as he flew, and then did get to his feet. He implored the shopkeeper to wait, but the shopkeeper just slammed the door behind him. In that case, Ju decided to go elsewhere. The boy went round many stalls, from cafes to flower shops, but everywhere he was not welcome, for Ju looked intimidating. In the end, Ju was confused. He didn't understand what was going on, for there was no work anywhere at all. So far he had not had a proper job, besides the guy himself realized that he looked terrible. Yes, and his clothes looked like a sack. Here Ju realized that it was not even surprising that he had been turned down. In that case, the guy decided that he was left with the options of becoming a soldier or an adventurer. As Ju wandered the streets, he came across an unpleasant situation. A man shouted at the girl in such a way that she bounced back. At that moment, Ju was just coming from behind. He caught the girl and asked her if she was hurt, to which the girl replied that she was fine. And Ju, on the other hand, remarked how good it was that the girl was not carrying anything. At that moment there was a woman's scream. It was the girl lying on the ground. She was screaming that her bag had been stolen. The thief was the same man who had just pushed the defenseless girl. He was about to disappear into the crowd with the stranger's bag. The girl standing with Ju at this time said that it would not be possible to catch the thief quickly, for the streets there are very winding. Ju, on the other hand, said he would go after this thief. Before the girl could reply, Ju was blown away by the wind. At that moment, soldiers appeared and started asking passers-by what had happened. The girl at that moment, who was standing with Ju, was only puzzled as to where Ju had disappeared to. At that moment, Ju was sitting on the roof of a building. He had a good view of the thief, who had disappeared between the houses. Now all Ju had to do was wait until the thief was in a deserted place. Ju realized that his experience in murder was not something to be boasted about. But since he could help, he had nothing to doubt. With that thought in mind, Ju flashed across the rooftops right behind the thief. The thief had already stopped at this point. He reckoned that the soldiers wouldn't be able to get here. In that case, the scoundrel decided to open his purse and look at the contents. The first thing he found was blue drops. That's when Ju appeared. He silently approached the thief from behind and, while he was looking at the contents of the lady's purse, began to strangle. In the end, the guy's mouth just flowed foam. Ju was even a little relieved that it went well, because he gets nervous every time he has to strangle someone. The guy liked to break and ruin things too much. The thief was still alive, so Ju just planted already on the ground on the sidelines. It's actually harder to keep someone alive than it is to kill them. But at least now Ju would have something to tell Hachai. Ju decided that the more the better. Then the boy picked up the stolen purse. It was a little dirty, but everything inside was intact. In that case, Ju decided to return the purse to that woman as soon as possible. When Ju returned to that street, the woman without the purse was standing next to the soldiers. Her attention was immediately drawn to Ju. Ju saw the woman looking at him and told her not to worry because everything was safe and sound. But suddenly the woman shouted loudly, pointing at Ju. She claimed that it was Ju who had stolen her bag. One day, Ju killed a bad landlord, which helped the empire. However, there was no joy at all. It didn't matter exactly who Ju's target was. He thought he could live something other than killing. But it only seemed that way to Ju. When he decided to return the bag to the woman as soon as possible and thought about how happy she would be, but something went wrong. When the woman shouted that her bag had been stolen by this man, pointing at Ju, everyone was dumbfounded. Ju just stood still and did not understand how come he was now the culprit. At that moment, one of the soldiers ordered Ju to stand still. Ju at this moment thought about just running away, but immediately realized that doing so would definitely make him look like a criminal. In that case, he simply began to sink to the ground and try to explain that he had not stolen anything, but quite the opposite. Ju claimed that he purely happened to be nearby when the thief snatched the bag and then chased after him and returned the items. The soldier, on the other hand, asked Ju what he had done to the criminal, to which Ju replied that he had knocked out the thief and he was now somewhere on the face of the red lights. The soldier, after saying this, thought that Ju was just trying to fool him. However, Ju continued to assure him that it was true. But the soldier did not believe Ju, for from the main street to the red light street was too great a distance. And after the theft, not even 10 minutes had passed. The soldier thought it was simply impossible that Ju had time to run, deal with the criminal, and return to the main street. The soldier surmised that Ju just wanted to take advantage of the commotion and run away. A frustrated Ju at this time had no idea what to say to be believed. At that moment, a certain girl began to make her way through the crowd. The soldiers, however, had already tied up Ju and began to lead him away. All Ju thought was that he had done a good deed for the first time, but now he was accused for nothing. The guy was seriously thinking about just running away. But suddenly, a woman's scream was heard from the crowd asking the soldiers to wait. The girl barely squeezed through the crowd and finally found herself face to face with the soldiers. It was the same girl who had been standing with Ju at the moment the woman's bag was stolen. The girl stated that Ju had not stolen anything. Ju recognized the girl and was even very happy to see her. The girl, however, at this point began to explain to the soldiers that she and Ju had been together in the square when everything happened. The girl claimed that she too wanted to chase the thief and the soldiers should find the real culprit first before accusing Ju. After all, if the thief had already woken up and ran away, it would be difficult. Here the soldiers thought for a moment. After thinking for a while, they asked Ju to show them where he had left the thief. Then Ju began to lead the soldiers to that very place, and the girl who had saved him only saw the boy off with a look. Ju looked at her too, and she smiled sweetly, though Ju's face was serious. After a while, Ju led the soldiers to the same place where he had left the thief unconscious. The soldiers were surprised to see the unconscious guy and asked if he was the thief, to which Ju replied yes. In that case, as things came to light, both the soldiers and the woman whose bag he had not stolen apologized to Ju. In the end, after saying goodbye to the soldiers, Ju drew only one conclusion from the whole story. It was just awful. Looking at the crowd, Ju thought about the fact that he had only gotten out because of that girl. In that case, the guy decided to be sure to thank her if he saw her again. In the end, Ju went to look for a job again, for before helping others, one must take care of oneself. Wandering along the main street, Ju thought about the fact that he had already been to all the shops on that street. Therefore, the guy thought that there was nothing for a ragamuffin like him here. Suddenly, Ju came across a tool shop. He immediately thought that sometimes murderers work under such a cover, and Ju hoped to put the past behind him. Finally, the guy decided that now was not the time to turn his nose up and decided to enter this tool shop. After opening the door to the shop and stepping inside, Ju began to look around. His attention was immediately attracted by the fine work that was displayed in this shop. It looked like an old experienced craftsman or a girl with good taste was working here. After looking around, Ju realized that there was no one inside the shop even though it was open. In that case, the guy assumed it was just a day off and asked if anyone was there. At that moment, a huge, friendly big man came out of the office. He merely greeted Ju and asked to be sure to look at the large selection of goods in the shop. Looking at the big man's kind smile, Ju was in a stupor. This was clearly not how he had imagined the worker of such a shop. The guy looked again at the jewelry work in the shop and this ambo. Shock. Finally, Ju asked the big man if he was a director, to which the man replied that he was the director. In that case, Ju apologized to him for his contempt. The big man, however, said that it was no big deal and he was used to such things. He then asked Ju what he was looking for. Ju explained that he wasn't looking for goods at all, but for a job. The guy claimed that he would like to work in this shop. These words made the director laugh. Ju was stunned and did not understand why he was laughing so hard. But the director, laughing, apologized to Ju and called him a funny guy. Ju just couldn't understand whether the big guy liked him or not. At that moment, the director scratched his head, apologized and said he had to refuse Ju. After all, the shop is small and there are enough people. These words made Ju very upset. The director noticed this and asked the boy not to be upset. He only asked Ju to drop by sometime and promised to help him. At that moment, a girl came out of the office into the shop. She came to the noise that was in the shop. It turned out to be the same girl who had saved Ju today and brushed off the soldiers. Seeing each other, the guys were amazed. In just a moment, the girl had already withdrawn from her surprise and happily said that she was very happy that Ju was let go. After that, they got to talking and Ju explained that he had come to this shop for a job. This idea seemed just fine to the girl. She began to convince the director that Ju was a kind man who was determined to catch the thief and help the stranger. The girl was just sure that Ju would be a good fit to work in the shop. After saying that, both men looked at each other. The girl, on the other hand, added that it would be good for the director. In that case, the director said, addressing Ju, that he could go to work from tomorrow. The girl was overjoyed. She confessed that she was worried that the director would find it difficult to run the shop with his big back. The principal, on the other hand, thanked the girl for her concern but stated that he was healthy. At this point, his back crunched in a way that made him bend and fall to his knees. The girl supported the man and asked him not to overexert himself. She then turned to Ju and said that the director of this shop was very active and should not carry everything on his back. At this point, the girl wanted to call Ju by name but realized that she did not know him yet. In that case, Ju decided to introduce himself. He said his name was Ju, completely forgetting that his new name was Jade. Lowering his head, he corrected himself and said that his name was Jade. Then the girl also introduced herself. The name of this savior was Stana. She was very happy to meet Ju. The principal at this time also decided to introduce himself and asked Ju to just call him Leslie. After a while, Stana had to go back home. Ju saw Stana off with Leslie on her back. As he left, the girl wished Leslie a good job, and Ju turned to Stana and thanked her for today. He promised to be sure to repay her kindness. Stana only smiled back at Ju. Leslie, watching this scene, chuckled and asked Ju if he was faking it. Ju, on the other hand, asked Leslie to just not say anything. He didn't think it was normal at all to hire some obscure person to look cool. So Ju asked Leslie not to even try to say later that he wasn't suitable. Leslie laughed and said that he was not retracting his words. The principal just thought that if Ju approved of Stan, then all was well. Ju then thanked Leslie for allowing him to work in the shop. Leslie, on the other hand, asked Ju not to expect a high salary because his business was not booming. Ju, on the other hand, said he would be satisfied as long as there was enough money to survive. After that, Leslie decided to say goodbye to Ju, for the shop was closed for the day. He asked the boy to come back early tomorrow so that Ju would have time to sort things out. Ju understood and said goodbye to Leslie. Back at the hotel, Ju went back satisfied, for he had found a job. Now he planned to try his best not to get fired right away. The lad was glad to have finally stepped off the old path lined with corpses and onto the new. Here was the beginning of Ju's peaceful life. At least he thought so. But at this time there was a disturbance in one of the bars and it had to do with Ju. The robber's accomplice that wanted to steal the woman's bag was on his knees apologizing. He assured his boss that he would try harder next time, but the boss wouldn't listen to anything. The blonde-haired, well-groomed guy with a sword under his arm asked the kneeling man to stop making excuses and answer one question. What's with the blue blobs? The guy started talking about how everything was fine at first, but as they were running away, the bag thief got caught. The blonde-haired guy, on the other hand, reminded his subordinate that he had said that they could definitely get away, so he had given them the job. In the end, however, one of the thieves was captured by regular soldiers. But the guy on his knees claimed it wasn't soldiers but someone else. The soldiers didn't come until later. Now the boss was curious. He asked the guy on his knees who it was, to which the chap replied that he didn't know that and nothing was known among the soldiers. The boss, on the other hand, was very disappointed that all this guy in front of him could do was to follow the soldiers and gather information. The guy, on the other hand, tried to justify himself again, but it was too late. The blonde-haired guy in the suit bared his sword and lastly asked his subordinate not to blame others for his mistakes. In just a moment, the subordinate who was kneeling earlier was chopped in two by the sword. The boss, on the other hand, saw this whole situation as a problem, especially when you need people and everyone who gets caught is just a fool. He realized that those who were caught should die before everything was blown wide open. In that case, it should be reported. The blonde-haired, seemingly calm guy was just furious. Out of anger, he swung his sword several more times at the corpse of the guy. Blood was flying in all directions. The guy with the sword was just tired of paying for the mistakes of idiots. At this moment, there were two guys in uniform standing outside the door, guarding the blonde guy and trying hard to eavesdrop on what was going on inside. When the light-haired, exhausted guy came out and asked them to clean the room, the two pretended they weren't eavesdropping on anything. And when the guys looked inside, they were just horrified at what they saw. The blonde-haired guy, on the other hand, headed for the exit. He kept thinking that it was a simple task that was not handled. In that case, he decided to be sure to kill the bastard that decided to prevent him. Which means that this guy is planning to torture Ju to death. Leslie has had a bad morning. It was very cold this morning, which made his back ache. Yesterday, Leslie wanted to show off in front of Stana, so he hired a guy named Jade. Leslie hoped that Jade wasn't some crazy. As Leslie was about to go outside of the shop to get some fresh air, Jay-Z appeared in the way and wished Leslie a good morning. Seeing Jay-Z, Leslie almost jumped up in surprise. He told Jay-Z that he had scared him, but Jay-Z claimed that he was just saying hello. Leslie then said that Ju had come too early, for it was just dawning. Now that's when Leslie got worried. He thought it was better than if Ju didn't come at all, so he let him into the shop. Leslie then spread his hands and asked Ju to take a good look at his shop called Black Cat. Ju started looking at the shop again and thinking about the name, Black Cat. This name seemed quite nice to Ju, but looking at the manager, Ju was puzzled at how a big guy like Leslie could give the shop such a name. Leslie didn't like the fact that Ju was staring at him like that. Leslie then sat down at the table and said he only knew Ju's first name, so he asked the guy to tell him what he had been doing before. This question stumped Ju. Surely he had a reason why he could not answer Leslie's question. Then Ju decided to embellish some things. He started by saying that his full name was Jade Clone. Until recently he had lived in the Elnard Empire. Now Leslie guessed that Ju had moved. Ju then stated that he had never had a single job in all these years. Leslie was astonished at such a statement. He asked Ju how did this even happen and had he been living with his parents all this time. To which Ju replied without emotion, sort of. At this point, Leslie covered his head with his hands and realized that he had got a completely useless employee. Ju, however, standing next to Leslie, asked the big guy if he was okay. Leslie answered nothing and just hovered in his thoughts. He didn't understand how he could have missed it, that Ju didn't know anything about the world at all. Leslie, of course, knew that Stana was a good judge of people, but it seemed that even she was wrong here. Leslie didn't know how he would tell Stana about this, then decided to fire Ju. To begin with, Leslie also decided to tell Ju everything about himself. He also started with his name. Leslie has been running this shop for 10 years and before that he was an adventurer. At this point, Ju realized how good it was that he had not lied about being an adventurer. Leslie, on the other hand, looking at Ju's strange face, asked what was wrong. To which Ju replied that now it just made sense to him how Leslie got so much muscle. Leslie, on the other hand, decided to show off again and struck a pose. And Ju asked Leslie not to do such poses or his back would hurt again. Leslie claimed that he was as healthy as an ox and then asked Ju to come over to him to explain. Ju gladly approached Leslie, but he could not tell if the big guy was joking or not. The first thing Leslie did was to tell Ju all about the transport. Then they went to the warehouse where Leslie also showed Ju everything. After the warehouse, they went to the accounting department and then studied shipping. On this, Leslie decided to call it a day for now. He also explained to Ju that most of the work was miscellaneous small jobs, but if Ju couldn't do even that, he wouldn't be a complete craftsman. Leslie argued that if Ju had an idea for something new, he should tell him about it, because good projects Leslie was willing to buy for a worthwhile price. Ju remembered these words from Leslie, but decided to get the basics right first. After thinking a bit, Ju realized that he could only deal with delivering orders now. Then Leslie pointed out to Ju the order that needed to be delivered. Without a moment's hesitation, Ju walked over to the order and began to pick it up. Leslie, on the other hand, rushed to stop Ju. As it turned out, the big guy was not happy that Ju was going to go out in public with such a mane, so he decided to transform it a little. Leslie simply tied Ju's hair into a ponytail so the guy wouldn't look like a monkey. Ju liked the hairstyle himself, so he didn't mind. Leslie added that if Ju shaved his beard, he would look neater. Ju, however, looked at the bearded Leslie with bewilderment. Leslie took the hint and declared that his beard was beautiful. Eventually, Ju took the order and went to deliver it. Leslie asked Ju to take his time and not to mix up the addresses. Before leaving, Ju only asked Leslie to trust him, and Leslie asked Ju not to get lost. After Ju left, Leslie realized that Ju was indeed an honest and hardworking guy, although he was worried at first. Leslie felt that Ju just needed to be looked after. Suddenly, Leslie noticed a map on the table that Ju had forgotten to bring with him. He decided to quickly go outside in hopes of catching up with Ju. But Ju was no longer around, which rather surprised Leslie. At this time, Ju was already flying across the rooftops of the kingdom. The first point is the house on the main street. It was easy for Ju to remember the way. He was helped by that incident of theft. After a while, Ju was already knocking on the door of the house on Main Street. The door was opened to Ju by a friendly man. Immediately he asked Ju who he was. Ju introduced himself and explained that he came from the Black Cat shop. Ju told him that the owner had asked him to deliver an order. The guy also asked if he had the wrong address. Here the greeting man realized where Ju was coming from and told him to go inside. But Ju stood on the threshold and did not dare to enter. Then the customer asked the boy why he was standing there. Ju, on the other hand, asked if he was sure he was okay with it, to which the man cheerfully replied that he did not mind. Ju did enter the house, but felt it was unsafe any way you looked at it. Then the boy wondered, is ordinary life really just like this? At this point, the man asked Ju to leave the order on the table and went to make tea himself. Ju, however, realized that the customer was planning a whole tea party, so he apologized and explained that he had work to do. These words disappointed the customer. He claimed that Leslie always stays for a cup of tea. This is where Ju understood everything. The man realized from Ju's frightened face that he had pushed him hard, so he apologized. He claimed that he and Leslie had bought sweets on purpose. At this point, Ju suddenly felt the urge to apologize to the customer. Then the guy decided to apologize for his rudeness and the customer asked him not to apologize. He explained that he was just really looking forward to it and when Mr. Leslie comes in here, they have a good time. The customer then said that he would be very happy the next time Jade came in and kept them company. Then Ju said that he would be sure to stop by for tea next time once he was done with his work. The customer then saw Ju off and the boy went on to deliver the orders. At some point, Ju realized that delivery was not just about taking orders. After a while, Ju delivered another order. Now the last one was left. Ju walked round 3 houses in 30 minutes. It was his first time in this city, so he thought it was a good time. Finally, the guy got to the last job. The door was opened by an excited boy. Ju explained that he had come from the Black Cat shop with a delivery. But no sooner had he finished speaking than the boy shouted joyously about the heroic sword. At that moment, Granny came out of the house and asked the boy named Ray to be quiet and not to bother his uncle. Ju on the other hand gave the boy the order and asked him to check if it was definitely him. The boy and Granny thanked Ju. They were sure it was exactly their order. While Ray was unpacking his order, the old lady explained to Ju that she had asked Leslie to fix the toy sword. She was delighted that the big boy had done it so well and her grandson's eyes were now sparkling. Suddenly, the old lady started talking about how sad it was that there were no more heroes. She thought that legends were passed on through books and games and that was how new brave heroes were born. Hearing these words, Ju looked at the old lady. The old woman noticed this and asked what is wrong, to which Ju replied that all was well. He thought it would be good if the new hero created a world where there were no sorrows. The old lady agreed with these words of Ju. Ju looked at the happy boy some more and went back to the shop. On the way, the boy thought about the fact that the rumors of the heroes' deaths had already reached here. Ju was sure that Chloe had covered it up well. But still, if you think about it that way. When Ju returned to the shop, Leslie was dumbfounded at how quickly Ju had delivered everything, since it had just been only half an hour. Ju, on the other hand, claimed that he had indeed delivered everything. Leslie couldn't believe it, since the nearest house was 20 minutes away. In that case, he decided that Ju had just thrown out all the orders and asked him directly. To which Ju replied that he had not thrown away any order. In that case, Leslie decided to check it out just in case. Leslie said they would go when the shop closed. Nothing else would need to be delivered. The big man planned to give Ju another job. It seemed to Ju that the sooner he gave all the orders the better, but eventually the guy realized he had overdone it. Leslie, on the other hand, never stopped looking at Ju with suspicion. When the shop closed, Leslie and Ju went to check on Ju's delivery of the orders. When they reached the first house on Main Street and the customer said his order had been delivered, Leslie was dumbfounded. Other orders were also with customers, so Leslie was convinced that Ju had indeed delivered everything. But it still never ceased to amaze Leslie. After all, it would have taken him all day. What Ju had picked up on, however, was that Leslie was a rather slow walker. Nevertheless, Leslie thought it was simply unimaginable speed. Leslie stopped and, calling out to the departing Ju, asked if he had lied. These words strained Ju. Leslie, on the other hand, claimed to be a former adventurer, so he was well aware of how strong Ju was. Ju was silent, so Leslie asked him why he was silent. Ju at this time just didn't realize what he would do if Leslie spoke up. The first thing Ju thought of was to kill Leslie, but he immediately pushed that thought away. Then the boy said he preferred not to tell such things. Prefers not to tell the fact that he killed heroes. Of course, Ju didn't say that out loud, but the guy realized that now he had to get out of town. Looking around, Ju realized that there was no one around on the street. In that case, Ju surmised that he could just knock Leslie out and run away. Leslie, on the other hand, at this point said that he now understood everything and wanted to ask. Ju was disappointed. He thought he and Leslie had a good relationship. And, when Leslie had already lowered his head and was ready to ask his question, Ju decided to act. While Ju had already pounced on a tearful Leslie with fists, Leslie assumed that Ju was just doing all the housework. How fortunate that Ju still managed to stop before hitting Leslie. He quickly bounced back and was only puzzled as to what Leslie was even talking about. Leslie, on the other hand, revealed that as a young man he too had to start early to take care of his family. Leslie claimed that he understood Ju as there was no time at all to enjoy life. Leslie was just sure that he and Ju had the same story. He had no idea that Ju was a murderer in the past. Leslie just wiped his tears and talked about how hard it must have been for Ju. Ju, meanwhile, had no idea what Leslie had been through, but figured it was best if the big guy continued to think that way. For another couple of minutes the guys just stood still. Then Leslie said he was hungry and invited Ju to go get something to eat. Leslie claimed that he would give Ju a treat for doing a good job. Such a statement made Ju drool. Then they quickly went to a cafe to get something to eat. The streets were still crowded. Suddenly, the same blonde-haired, well-groomed guy with a sword walked past Ju. Ju turned around. The blonde-haired guy had clearly caught his attention. Leslie noticed that Ju was looking around and asked what was wrong. Although Ju answered Leslie that nothing was wrong, but he could smell blood coming from the blonde-haired guy even though he looked tidy. This was the first time Ju had seen such a thing in the city. But still, the guys passed each other. The blonde-haired type didn't even realize that he had just walked past someone who had ruined his plans in an instant. It's been a week since Ju started working at Black Cat. Some things came easy to Ju, others not so much. Mostly the guy just delivered orders. But one day, as the workday drew to a close, Leslie told Ju that he might not come in tomorrow. Ju was just horrified, but Leslie just wanted Ju to just rest. Ju, on the other hand, felt that he was already fired. Leslie explained to the guy that he wasn't fired and asked what was wrong with him, to which Ju replied that it was just an old injury. After all, he had previously been kicked out of everything. Leslie, on the other hand, argued that it had only been a week on the job, but Ju had already become indispensable in the shop. The big man asserted that without Ju he would not have been able to start working on new things. So Leslie threatened Ju with his fist and asked him not to even think about quitting because he was needed in the shop. After which Leslie again said that Ju could wash not to come to the shop tomorrow because he had already worked for a whole week. Ju then realized that Leslie was just giving him the day off. But the problem was that Ju didn't even know what to do. Eventually, the big guy let Ju do whatever he wanted and gave him a bag of coins as his wages for the week. Leslie also advised Ju to buy food or booze, but to keep in mind that it was his wages from now on, so he should not waste it. So, after paying for food and lodging, there were 5 gold coins and 3 silver coins left over. This is more than what Ju was given for killing heroes. Now Ju wondered the next question. How would he use it? Since Ju smelled so bad that even people would turn round, he decided to find some normal clothes first, and then some knife. Suddenly, there was a loud female scream behind Ju's back. Thief. As it turned out, some guy stole the woman's bag and promptly started running away. Ju noticed this and was even a little surprised. It seemed to him that stealing was already in fashion here. Ju also remembered that he had been undeservedly blamed the last time he helped out, but thanks to this Instana the guy was able to get a job at Leslie's shop. Then, Ju thought that by helping people, he would be able to get the word out about the Black Cat. He already imagined the woman who had her bag stolen asking him for his name and thanking him, and he would reply that he was a simple laborer from Black Cat. Eventually, Ju thought that sounded pretty good and decided to take action. He stealthily wandered into a back alley and then flew across the rooftops. Ju then began to search for his target and, upon discovering the thief, realized that the rascal had run down one of the roads. Suddenly, events took a different turn. It seems that someone was already waiting for the thief. At first, Ju thought it was a simple raid, but the group behaved passively, so it didn't look like a raid. Suddenly, Ju heard one of the guys ask, "Did you come?" To which the other answered him no. At that moment, Ju realized that these men were obviously waiting for someone. Ju realized that usually a criminal would be chased. But what was that thief going to do with the bag and his accomplices? Ju thought this whole situation was strange, but realized that he could have caught that thief and asked about it. But the guy also thought that getting the stuff back as quickly as possible was the most important thing. At this moment, the villains were clearly not happy that no one was chasing their thief. The thief also stopped and was puzzled. One of the guys with dreadlocks assumed it was just a decoy. Another thought that the dreadlock guy was just not happy with his plan. And a third asked what they should do now. The guy with the knotted hair, apparently the chief among them, said that they could not return empty-handed. So he suggested to his comrades that they change places and try again. At this moment, Ju stealthily descended from the roof and walked between the houses. When the fellows were about to leave, Ju quickly closed the thief's mouth and led him into the back alley before anyone saw. Lastly, the head of the group said that they needed to catch someone who catches criminals in the red light district. At this point, Ju thought for a moment. The red light district is the very place where he caught the past thief. So was it really Ju who was the target of these guys? The guy had a lot of questions. Why? If these people are acting on their own, who ordered them to do so? At this moment, the guys rushed to find the last of their group who had been taken away by Ju. They searched all the nooks and crannies but never found their partner. Ju was watching them at this point, standing on the roof and holding the knocked out thief on his shoulder. Taking a deep breath, Ju thought about the fact that it was getting harder. But the guy decided to watch these guys some more since he hadn't been exposed yet. After a while, Ju returned to the main street and immediately approached the soldier. The soldier recognized Ju and asked what was wrong. He even decided to make a joke and asked if Ju had caught a thief again. To which Ju replied that that was what had happened. The soldier was a bit taken aback when Ju presented him with the thief and the stolen bag. He was just joking and Ju had indeed caught the thief again. Ju, on the other hand, was simply remarking on how unexpected it was that he and the soldier had met again. When the thief was already in the hands of the soldier and Ju started to leave, the soldier offered to join the soldiers because Ju would be welcome there. But Ju decided to refuse. He stated that he was now working in a tool shop called Black Cat. That's where he belongs. Then the soldier said that he would definitely go to that shop if he needed tools. Ju, however, asked him not to make any promises. After that, Ju went to look at the gun shops again. He came across one nice piece, but the price was through the roof. After all, Ju himself realized that everything on the main street was worth a lot, not just weapons. Walking into a jewelry shop, Ju came across one thing that he had also seen in Black Cat. But at the Black Cat, the quality was better and the price cheaper. Ju realized that the more he saw and knew, the better. Even just by looking at the shop window, one could find many differences. Ju wanted to look at the Western market as well, but it was getting late and time to go home. At that moment, Stana appeared on Ju's path. The girl was very happy to see Ju. Ju was also very surprised and happy to see Stana. The first thing he said was how amazing it was that they had met again. Stana thought the same way. She asked Ju how his work was. Guy thanked Stana and told her that he was doing deliveries instead of Leslie running back and forth across town. Stana laughed and said it was great. Suddenly, the girl realized that now Ju could work too and apologized for delaying him. Ju, on the other hand, hurriedly explained to Stana that today was his day off and he would like to buy something, but the prices everywhere were frightening. Stana agreed with Ju and also remarked that the main street was expensive. The girl confessed that here she only looks at shop windows. Stana argued that it was best to go east. Without thinking long, the girl decided to call Ju to go shopping. After a while, Ju was already trying on his new clothes that Stana had picked out for him. In the end, everyone liked the outfit that Stana had put together. When they left the clothing shop, Ju told Stana that he would also like to buy a gun. The girl was interested in this and asked if it was for the shop. Ju pondered over the answer. He realized that he could not tell Stana that he was being hunted by a strange gang. So he said that the city is very big and the guy himself is always getting into trouble. In that case, Stana decided to show Ju the gun shop and turned the corner despite forward. At that moment, the very same blonde-haired guy appeared around the corner. It turned out that Stana bumped into this guy. The girl immediately started apologizing to the bloodthirsty killer and explaining that she hadn't noticed him. At this point, Ju felt something wrong. He had a vision of a blonde-haired boy cutting Stana in two with his sword. When Ju came to his senses, Stana was lying on the ground with Ju holding her. Stana asked Ju to let her go. Then Ju quickly pulled himself away from the girl and apologized. Stana, on the other hand, asked Ju not to apologize so much, for she herself had fallen. At this point, the blonde-haired guy with the sword started talking about how he was sorry that things had happened and he had crashed into the girl. Stana, on the other hand, thought that she was the one who was not watching the road. At this moment, Ju, remembering his vision, thought that he never thought he would see such a lust for killing. At this point, Stana had already spoken to the stranger and it appeared that he too was on his way to the gun shop. The guy claimed that there was a good gun shop nearby and he needed to take his friend's sword there, but it turned out that he got a little lost. In that case, the polite Stana suggested that the lad should go there together. The lad was only too glad to do so, for they were on their way anyway. Finally, this mysterious and violent guy introduced himself. His name is Avon. He asked Ju and Stana to remember this name. So, the blonde-haired mysterious guy asked Stana for help and she just couldn't say no. Ju, on the other hand, suspected something. The mysterious guy seemed like a good person, but Ju also felt a lust for murder. That's when Ju realized this stranger was clearly dangerous. Ju realized that he could deal with this type, but here was Stana, so nothing could be done. Suddenly, the blonde-haired stranger turned around and looked directly into Ju's eyes. Then he smiled and joked about how scary Ju was looking at him. The stranger asked Ju not to worry because he was not going to take Stana away. Stana, hearing these words, became embarrassed and started explaining that Owen just misunderstood everything. In that case, Avon wanted to make one proposal to Stana, but Stana asked him to keep quiet and asked him to go to the gun shop already. While Avon and Stana were frolicking, Ju, who was walking behind, got a little tired of this chatter. He felt that the most important thing right now was Stana's safety. Avon felt Ju's gaze on him and kept looking back. After a while, Stana led the boys to the very same gun shop. She didn't look like much, but Stana claimed that the quality of the weapons here was excellent. Without a moment's hesitation, Stana opened the door of the shop and said good evening. When the boys walked in, Avon sobbed. It was very hot in the shop, but surprisingly Stana and Ju were unfazed. Stana knocked on the office door and asked if Mr. Dan was here. Ju, on the other hand, began to diligently look at the weapons. Looking at the merchandise, Ju saw how good the quality of the weapons were, even though the shop was very small. The blades even have nice neat engravings. The sword made of green ore and the armor made of unicorn demon bones caught Ju's attention. Ju also came across some old man wearing a wolf skin. Then Ju wondered if this old man was for sale. At that moment, Stana approached Ju and saw the old man. As it turned out, it was the same Mr. Dan who had been looking for Stana so diligently. The girl realized this and started to wake him up. The old man woke up and on seeing Stana recognized her. The first thing Stana did was to apologize to Mr. Dan for disturbing him. At this time, Ju and Avon, who were watching this picture, realized one thing. Dan is a dwarf. Stana at this time pointed her hand at Ju and Avon and explained to Dan that these guys were looking for good weapons. The girl then asked the old man if she had made a mistake in bringing these guys here. Dan, on the other hand, explained that he was going to sleep, but since it was Stana's request, he simply could not refuse. So Dan asked the boys what they wanted. Avon explained that he wanted Dan to patch up the sword a bit. This sword has an unusual shape, so all the other masters refused Avon. Taking the sword out of its sheath, the old man was surprised. He hadn't seen this kind of thing very often, so he wondered, where did Avon get such a sword? Avon replied that the sword had been brought from abroad. Stana said that the sword looked like a souvenir. Owen laughed and added that his friend had told him the same thing. While the old man was looking at Avon's sword, Avon asked if the sword could be repaired, to which the old man replied that this sword could certainly be repaired. So Dan asked the boys to wait while he repaired the sword in the workshop. Avon, however, did not object. As Dan was leaving, Stana asked him if they could look at the goods while he was gone. The girl explained that Ju would like a weapon for himself. The old man, however, replied that he didn't care and only asked the boys to call him if anything. When the old man left, Ju apologized to Stana. Stana simply suggested that Ju pick him up something and asked him what his budget was. Then Ju took out his 2 silver coins and showed Stana. Owen saw that Ju only had 2 silver coins and said that picking up a weapon would be difficult. Avon then turned around and looked at the price tag and realized that everything in that corner was for 2 silver coins. Ju, on the other hand, clearly did not like the fact that Avon had become so animated. Owen, on the other hand, claimed that he only wanted to thank Ju. He claimed that he had a good eye, even though it looked suspicious. Ju, on the other hand, asked Owen not to interfere and said that he would choose his own weapon. Stana, on the other hand, stated while chiding Ju that they would gladly accept Avon's help. Owen, on the other hand, asked the boys to leave it to him. After a couple of minutes, Owen presented a box of swords to Ju and said that Ju could choose one of these. Looking at the swords, Avon noticed that this place had everything from treasures to junk. Then he wondered who the owner of the shop was, to which Stana replied that she didn't know that. Suddenly, Ju declared that he had already found what he wanted. It was a dagger. Avon, on the other hand, was amused that Ju had chosen the dagger. This dagger was also quite old, but there was clearly something about it. At this time, Owen put the sword to Ju's throat and asked the lad why he didn't want to take something better than the old dagger if he had the right to choose. Owen suggested that Ju take the sword he now had at his throat. The guy argued that with that sword it would be easier to just chop someone's head off, but Ju claimed that he had already made up his mind. At this point, the two boys had a battle of glances. Stana were at this time found the dummies and suggested that the guys try it out. Avon liked the idea. He decided to do just that. Taking the sword out of its sheath, the guy started to approach the mannequin. At this time, Ju thanked Stana. Owan at this time let Ju forward to be the first to try out the dummy since he was choosing his dagger. Without thinking long, Ju plunged the dagger straight into the dummy's chest. The guy then pulled the dagger out, and the dummy only staggered slightly. Stana at this time began to clap her hands. Ju himself was very surprised. He was particularly amazed that such a dagger only cost 2 silver coins. Avon at this time wondered what the sword he had chosen was capable of if this dagger of Ju's was so good. With a single swing, Avon chopped the dummy into many pieces. The stumps left of the mannequin fell to the floor. Stana was greatly delighted at such a sight. At that moment, Dan returned with Avon's sword. He said that he had already finished the work. Avon, however, felt it necessary to apologize to the old man for spoiling his doll. Dan, on the other hand, argued that there was nothing wrong with it. He looked at the basket of swords that was out of place and realized that the boys had taken the sword from there. Because of that, the old man reckoned that they were good with weapons. After that, Dan asked Avon if he would take the sword. Avon, on the other hand, took time to think and looked at Ju as if giving him one last chance to take the sword. Stana realized this too and asked Ju if he had made up his mind. The girl asked the boy to think faster because Avon could take this amazing sword for himself. Ju, on the other hand, replied that he would only use what he chose himself. This seriousness of Ju even pissed off Avon a little. When the boys paid, Dan asked them to come back for more and escorted them out. He was glad the guys left, for they were rather unexpected visitors. As the old man approached the chopped up mannequin, he realized that it could not be repaired. He looked at the cut that had been made by Avon and marveled at how smooth it was. Suddenly, Dan's attention was drawn to some hole in the armor behind the mannequin. As it turned out, it was not ordinary armor, but armor made of datris ore. The old man, however, looked again at the mannequin and saw the same hole in it as in the armor. So was it really the same dagger? It even pierced the armor. These are the toughest lats in Dan's shop. He didn't even know he had anything in his shop that could make a hole in them. Imagining how all this was happening, it suddenly hit Dan. He quickly began rummaging through one of the boxes. Suddenly, he realized that the dagger forged by his teacher was missing. It was an unsightly and old dagger. Lan was sure that an ordinary adventurer wouldn't even look at such a one. The old man realized that he had only paid attention to the blonde man, but who was truly striking was the other guy, Ju. At this time, Ju and Stana were already walking alone on the night street of the kingdom and talking carefree. Avon at this time had returned to his den, humming a song merrily under his breath. His servants met him. The bald fellow asked how his master was and whether he had mended his sword, to which Avon replied that he had repaired the sword and invited the bald fellow to look at it. In an instant, Avon drew his sword and cut off one ear of the bald guy. Owen only laughed and talked about how amazing it was. The guy then went to the bar and at the snap of his fingers ordered his second subordinate to pour him something. Avon was enjoying this marvelous day. He even thanked God for it. Avon also did not stop thinking about Ju. The boy noticed that Ju kept his distance on purpose. It even frightened him. That's when Owen decided to find out more about this jade.